Hello, Simone. I'm excited to be here with you today. Today, we are going to be talking about a satanic cult that was started on Minecraft by a 15-year-old.
On Minecraft?
Yeah, well, yeah, it grew early on Minecraft and Roblox. And people can hear about this and they can be like, how bad can it be? Specifically, we're going to be going over the 764 group, which is linked to other groups in the COM network, like the No Lives Matter movement, the Manic Murder cult, the Sadistic Manics cult, the Satanic Front.
Oh, goody.
And the Mordroff division. But anyway, so you might be hearing this and being like, how bad can this really be? It's a bunch of children. So I'll read from an article in Wired and then we'll get to the article itself. But this is just sort of preview of the type of shenanigans they get up to.
Okay.
Carden Head and other members of this group would lure young women into video chats and extort them into cutting themselves, performing live, what's the word here I should use, actual acts, or harming themselves. Eve, a girl from the Midwest, when she was younger, her mother recounted her daughter being drawn into the Exploitation network through gore servers on Discord, where I'm going to just going forwards in this, whenever I'm talking about people who are below certain age ranges, we're just going to use the word chicken instead, okay?
Okay, that sounds good.
The word chicken instead, okay?
I think I can handle that.
Okay. Where chickens would watch ultra-violent content, what 764 would do is they would go in and drop videos in these groups and try to start pulling kids out of it and into that server. Before I go further, this is actually really interesting before we get into what happened to this girl, is how they did it. So they take gore and other extreme content and they dump it into things like Minecraft or Roblox or children's Discord servers.
Oh, so like ElsaGate, but on steroids and way worse.
Yeah, because it's very intentional. Well, it's different than that, because with ElsaGate, it's like, oh, this stuff is doing well with kids or anything like that. This is more like if you're at that edgy phase of like being young, you know, like let's say you're like 10 or 11 or something like that.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I'm not allowed to talk about this sort of stuff. You know, somebody dumps it and you're like, oh, this is where the edgy cool kids are. Let's go to their town. Like, let's go to their server. So the moderator of 764 server, who went by Brad, one of the aliases connected to Caden Head, quote unquote, groomed her daughter through false shows of affection and convincing them to send unclosed photographs. Once they established a degree of trust, Caden and the extorters threatened to harm her elementary school aged brother or release the explicit photographs. On video calls, they would urge her to unalive herself and convince her to carve usernames of members of the server into her skin.
Oh my gosh.
They talk later in the piece that I think like half a decade or a decade later, she still has some of these scars. Of their
this is screwed.
They pressured her to strangle her cat and even behead her hamster on camera.
Wait, and she did it?
Yes, but biting its head off. They said, bite the head off or I'll F up your whole life. A user named Felix told Eve on video. During the police investigation, Felix was an alias associated with the IP address linked to Caden Head. Eve did all of this from her bedroom closet. Things took a turn for the worse when she cut herself too deeply one night in the bathtub and turned the waters red, like one of her extorters had requested. They also swatted the family's house and began calling her school and telling the principal she tried to murder animals, prompting school officials to file a report to the police. You just don't realize how quickly it can happen, Eve's mother said. According to her mother, FBI did not reach out to Eve until December 2023. The Stevensville Police Department was not aware of Eve's victimization by Camden Head, blah, 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 until 2 years after his arrest. Eve's mother said FBI agents contacted her the following months and asked for details, blah, 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 blah. Sorry, I skip ahead a lot when I'm reading pieces for stuff you guys don't care about. An interview with Camden Head gave the probation services confirmed the general details of Eve's story. Bradley did admit to the group's use of the servers to do that sort of extortion on individuals, the thread said. They would do this for money and sometimes just for power over individuals. And Camden Head himself admitted urging users of the server to carve his initials into their bodies as a form of homage, and described his servers as a cult and himself as a venerated leader. Last spring, this guy, Caden Head, who we'll get to later, 18 years old, 15 when he started the group, was sentenced to jail for 80 years.
Well, okay. At least there was that
Well,
was
no. There's unfortunately many other individuals in this group. We're going to be going over a series of the arrests, but you typically don't know of what they've done until after they've been arrested.
I can't believe. So we're actually talking about this because I heard Catherine D mention it on a Blocked and Reported episode this morning. Like, I'd never heard of it before, and I can't believe I've never heard of it because this is so grisly and horrible, and it's something to which so many of our kids are vulnerable. One thing that's getting a lot of coverage recently is porta parties in Dubai. Have you heard of them?
No, tell me. Oh yeah, where they take women or whatever. To explain.
Well, no, basically, so yeah, like really, really wealthy men in Dubai offer to pay like Instagram models and influencers who are really, like attractive women between, tens of thousands to even over $100,000 to come out to these really debauched parties where they make them like eat poop and urinate in their mouths and things like that, right? But like these are adult women who are making really bad judgments, and they're signing NDAs and they're making a lot of money from it. And now there are cases of women unaliving themselves after this, or even potentially having their lives non-consensually ended if they like refuse to comply during the parties. Like, I'm not saying these don't go wrong, but this is like women getting themselves into it, right? Then they're getting a lot of coverage. The fact that this is happening to young children whose parents think that they're just having fun on Roblox.
No, but I think that actually undersells the scope of this.
Yeah.
If you look at this, there are as many, if not more, people in the young perpetrator category.
Yeah.
I'm talking around the age of like, let's say 15 to like 17.
Right.
Than there are in the victim category. So when you think about your kids and how they get sucked into this, you shouldn't just be thinking about your kids as potential victims,
right,
but as potential perpetrators.
So, yeah. And like, again, like there are only so many rich men in Dubai. I mean, there's a lot, right, that have like, really, really fetishes that they want to act on and are willing to do it. Like, but like there's an endless number of screwed up adolescents. And
well, I think all adolescents are intrinsically screwed up.
Yeah, but now there's this pipeline to like incredibly evil acts.
Well, yeah, but I think the pipeline is actually in a way created by the parents, and we'll get to that. Another thing I note here, if you're like, how is this stuff done at scale in the way it's happening?
Okay.
It is, so later on the piece goes, the abuse was systemic and even codified in writing. A user with the alias Convict circulated a how-to guide for grooming potential victims that identifies chickens with mental disorders and illnesses as the most susceptible to manipulation.
Well, of course.
The detailed instructions document how to feign affection and draw victims into influence, and then turn attention into negative enforcement and sow self-doubt in order to bring the person to the edge of a quote-unquote borderline episode. The guide reads, quote, when they hit an episode, continue to break them down until they seem defeated, end quote.
That is so sick. Oh, yeah. God. How are we? I'm glad we're learning about this as parents.
Yeah. So I will go into this as we get into specific examples and stuff like that. I mean, people can imagine all the examples end up being somewhat samey, if I'm going to say, if salacious. But I think it's more interesting now we're at the beginning and we're talking the hook to talk about the theory around all of this and what's happening in our society.
Okay.
A lot of the pieces on this will be like, this chicken started to engage with online erotic material at like X young age.
Yeah.
And that material involved gore, and that is how they were brought into these communities. The problem is, when we did our, sexual survey for our arousal pattern stuff, one, generally, if kids are on the internet, they are engaging with erotic material if they are at all counterculture, right? Like,
not even that. I mean, I listened to a whole podcast on just those weird mobile ads for games that ultimately are like 100% about fetishes, like foot fetishes and vor and all these things. Like you'll even see it if literally you're just exposed to mobile game ads. But go on.
Yeah. Well, no, I point out with something like vor or something in the book, one of the statistics I always loved is the percent of the American population that is aroused by vor, that is people eating other people, is larger than the population that lives in the state of Massachusetts, which is like the 5th most populous state or something.
Yeah. To give you some
So
scale.
we're not talking about, and if you're talking about any of these more, you know, sort of gore related, sadism related, masochism related, like any of the ones like we're not supposed to talk about arousal categories, if you put those all together, you're probably looking at like 25% of the population.
Yeah, and
or
just to be
more.
clear, and this is something that Malcolm emphasizes again and again in The Pragmatist Guide to Sexuality, just because something turns you on doesn't mean you morally endorse it, doesn't mean you practice it, etc. Like a lot of these people clearly are going way too far with these, but just because you're turned on by this doesn't mean you should, can, or even are morally okay with doing this.
Okay, but consider what's happening in these kids' minds from the perspective of the way the parents have normalized different forms of sexuality and arousal content. Okay, so they hit, you know, 15, 16, whatever. They start being aroused by things that they don't have another explanation for.
Sure.
And they see stuff, whether it is masochistic related content for many of these young girls. I would not be surprised given how common young girl masochists were when I was, you know, like in high school and stuff like that.
Yeah. Cutting was so common in my middle school and high school.
Yeah. Not even just normal cutting, but I'm talking like more direct mass. Because at one of the pieces, they're like he like cut the girl and like drank her blood or something like that. And I'm like, bro, I know so many people who were into like vampire stuff.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean,
at those ages
enough. Yeah.
But here's the problem. It's the media and it's the parents who teach the kids that when what the kids don't realize are fairly common arousal patterns, right? When these start to emerge in them, they are the only evoked set they have is, if I am getting X impulses, I must be an evil Satanist, right?
Oh, yeah, because no one has told them that a lot of people feel this way and it doesn't correlate with what you morally condone, or
it doesn't mean
this is not in order to act on it. Yeah.
Yeah. You can feel something. That doesn't mean you have to act on it. That doesn't mean to. But that's not the way this is contextualized for them.
You're totally right.
Only evil people like engaging with this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And because the kids are taught that at this very young age, when they're trying to figure out who am I, right? They don't know who they are yet.
Yeah.
They say, well, if only evil people find this stuff alluring, then I am evil. And then what they do is they begin to evil max. They begin to take all of these other things they associate with vague evilness. So what you'll notice about these groups is they don't often have like a coherent ideology. They're not attempting to achieve any specific end in the world. They're described as nihilistic, but nihilism is the wrong way to put it because they're quite agentic for nihilists.
You're right. Yeah.
They're not really nihilistic. They have an agenda, right? But what the agenda is a collection of all of the ideas and motivations and ideologies that society has told them, whether it's Nazi ideology or satanic worship. Like Nazism and satanic worship are actually pretty antithetical ideologies.
Yeah.
If you actually look, right? Well, no, you see this with the type of like imbecile who's like a white nationalist and like a Catholic integralist, which is like weirdly common among like the Nick Fuentes crowd, because he's a Catholic integralist and some people think he's like white nationalist, and these two things are literally directly antithetical. The Ku Klux Klan was specifically interested in wiping out blacks, Catholics, and Jews. Like Catholics were just as bad as blacks to the Klan. And yet they will identify as that and this other thing because in their progressive minds, I actually think that this is how people adopt these antithetical ideologies. They grow up in progressive urban monocultural households and they go, what are the most evil groups I could associate with? Oh, let's go Nazi, KKK, and some extremist religious Christian group that's very traditionalist, like Catholic integralism. And it forms a completely incoherent ideology. Or you look at these kids who grew up very sort of in more normie families and stuff like that, and it's okay, what's the most evil things that could happen? I'm an evil person now. No, I know that because my entire life I've been told that people that want to engage with X or Y are evil.
Or that feel good when exposed to. Well, some form of good, aroused when exposed to X or Y.
Yeah. And when sometimes it's not even arousal. Sometimes it's just like, this is interesting to me. Like, I was told that this would repel me, and yet I find it curious and interesting, and I want to know more.
Yeah. And they assume that's conflated with them endorsing it somehow. And it's not. It's not.
No, but then they get into communities, right? Communities that collect content like this and that share content like this. And they want to be involved in those community status hierarchies, because that's just sort of naturally what happens to kids. They say, okay, you know, I'm in X or Y group now. This is a group of people who are like me, because my parents are not like me. They have signaled people who like X, Y, Z. They're evil, right?
Right.
And so I am going to try to, because our brains, our animal brain is like, okay, who's your tribe? They're like, this is my tribe. What does my tribe do? It tries to get chickens to bite their pet's head off in closets while filming it, right? Now I need to do more than that. Like, that's how status is earned within these communities, which many of the articles go into. And I need to do more than that. And I need to do more than that. And I need to do more than that. And people can be like, well, I monitor my kids' online activity. And it's like, you can not fully monitor your kids' online activity. Once a kid is 15, if they are a smart kid, when they're an agentic kid, which you should hope your kids are, they will understand technology at a level that you don't. You cannot monitor a 15-year-old's activity on the internet any more than your parents could have monitored you at 15 on the internet.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
You simply know more about how computers work than they do. And they will simply know more about how AI and whatever the computers of tomorrow work. And you're like, well, I monitor their PC, and I monitor their phone, and I monitor their tablet. And I'm like, well, I mean, you do know that you can buy a cheap burner phone for like $40, right? On like eBay or something that's a few years old, and that can access any Discord server, any online forum. They don't need top of the line hardware for this. And then you're like, oh shoot, I hadn't thought of that. Where would my kid hide a burner phone? You don't know where they'd hide a burner phone. It could be at school. The only way around seeing your kids radicalized is to, and people can be like, well, look, in my generation, this is one of the things, and this is why, you know, many people on our show or in our comments know that we are like, look, I'm not saying pornography is like the best thing ever, but I am saying, or even fetishize pornography or online things like that. But I am saying that building too much of a negative stigma around them within the current online social context gives attackers a very easy pathway to your kids. And keep in mind, it's not just this type of content. I mean, like, what about furry content? Like, if you tell them that these people are weird degenerates, and then they watch something like that, you know, now if you're adding like furry stuff in here, you're not getting like everything that could potentially be derided by somebody that turns somebody on. You're getting to like 50% of the population now. You know, now they're like, oh, well, I'm a furry and furries are evil, so I'm going to do a bunch of evil stuff. And so the question is how do you go over this stuff with your kids? Well, one, we offered the Pragmatist Guide to Sexuality for like 99 cents. I think it is a fairly good book that does not glorify arousal or sexuality, but also doesn't put too much negative stigma. I will say it has a slight negative stigma throughout the book on it, which is like, humans are gross, humans do gross things, but like, you're still a human. It's, I think, a pretty good book for parents to go over with their kids in the same way that like my parents would go over, I don't know if your parents did with you, like the puberty books that are supposed to teach you about like,
oh no, we didn't do that.
What's going to happen at puberty.
No.
That's what I'd probably go over with my kids, because I think it explains so many aspects of arousal and gender identity in a way that is better than the LGBTQ plus community does, from the perspective of like some of the things we point out is that grouping humans into gay or straight as categories basically makes no sense when you consider that the number of people who are aroused predominantly by swapped genitals. So by this, what I mean is they will find, primary and secondary sex characteristics. Primary sex characteristics are sexual characteristics used in the mating process. Secondary sex characteristics are stuff like breasts or hand size
Or like
or
broad
sort of
shoulders,
broad shoulders, right? The broadly female
beards.
form, right?
Yeah.
So the percentage of people who are aroused by one set of primary sex characteristics and the other set of secondary sex characteristics is larger than the population that is aroused by, or I think it's like around the size of the population. I can't remember. It's big, to the point where if you're talking about the community that arise by matching yet opposite sex characteristics, you're like, oh, this isn't like a particularly, in terms of unusual arousal patterns, particularly pronounced enough to define it as a totally new type of humanity or something. And this helps when you're going through all this with kids, because then they're like, oh, when somebody comes up and tries to feed them this stuff, they're like, it reminds me of when I was a kid. And one of the things my mom did with me that really helped me not get into drug culture as a kid is when I was younger, she would smoke marijuana with me. And so
It was a mom thing and therefore a not rebellious thing.
yeah, I thought it was like an old lady thing. Like people would come and they'd be like, and it made it much easier for me to turn them down without feeling like I'm being excluded.
Yeah.
Where they would come and they'd be like, hey, do you want marijuana? And I was like, I can always get marijuana from my mom. Like,
Yeah.
why do I want it from you? Your marijuana could be laced with something.
Yeah.
And this immediately, one, sort of frames to them, I'm actually way cooler than you and in a way cooler environment and household and everything like that.
Well, that's true.
And two, I'm doing it in a subversive way. Like, well, you don't know what that's been cut with. Like, how reliable is your dealer? How did you source them?
Yeah.
You know, now all of a sudden you're coming at this from a totally different. Oh, and that's mom stuff. And I want to do that for sexuality with our kids. Actually, the intro to the Pragmatist Guide to Sexuality is, we pray that this book ruins, or something like that. We're sorry for this.
It was like that it's dedicated to our children for whom we've just ruined sexuality.
Yeah, but yeah, anyway, I'm going to keep going here. But anything you want to say before I go further?
No, I very much agree with what you say, and do think that in that sense, we're setting up our kids pretty well to be prepared for this. Though I like all this sort of like chat room radicalization stuff. I think I need to put more thought into that.
Well, there's just so little you can do. So little you can do. You really need to give them a good friend network, work really hard to make sure they have good friends, online friends, because that's where their best friends are likely to be, which is why we focus on networking, why we create, you know, the Discord server we have and everything like that. Because I want environments where I would feel safe. Like, I know on the Basecamp Discord server, nobody's getting groomed. Nobody's getting radicalized. Like, it's just too diverse in the number of perspectives that are within it. And so it's a great environment for my kids as they get older. Right. And I think that what I would, you know, put upon people within the Discord server, especially, is when young people are in the server, you know, be very supportive and make them feel important, because that's what young people especially want from online communities.
Yeah, because there is sort of the opposite type of online communities. Like, I think, okay, within limits, the effective altruism / rationalist community for teens has been really good. Like, they've jump-started their careers, raised money. Sometimes it doesn't go so well, but like there are some instances of teens entering tight-knit communities that start online that lead them to accelerate their maturation and education and empowerment. So it's not like it's all bad, and one just has to be careful, I guess.
I mean, I don't think EA communities are safe anymore.
Yeah, but they used to be. I mean, like, we met so many young people who were like incredibly mature, incredibly entrepreneurial.
The Lysians literally came out of the EA community.
I know. It's just, we've also met many young people who have been really nicely shaped by it and the connections they made within it. So it's
but that was in the last generation.
Yeah.
I don't think it's.
Yeah, I guess not anymore. But I'm just saying that there have been historical examples of online.
I mean, I think that Basecamp is the new safe EA community.
Hopefully.
Like that's what we've been becoming. That's what the pronatalist movement's been becoming. Because if you go to the normal one, it's all like AI doomerism. I have no reason to live anymore.
Yeah, that's very toxic.
Book tour. But anyway, the FBI and other foreign law enforcement agencies are investigating 764 for both.
Are you trying to find a YouTube safe way to put this?
Yeah, chicken mexual assault offenses and terrorism because of connections to the Order of Nine Angels, a Satanist cult from Great Britain that has been ever present in the online edgelord and militant neo-Nazi circles for over a past decade.
Oh no.
Swastikas, Nazi memes, and accelerationist propaganda, glorifying homicidal members of white supremacist groups like Anti-Morph Division frequently appear in the extortion group's Telegram chats. Well, many users appear unfamiliar with 09A dogma. The sex symbols, text, and aesthetic have been widely co-opted within the group for shock value. The practice of urging victims to injure themselves with cut signs also bears a striking resemblance to 09A rituals. Now, I'm going to get into 09A, but I think you see the media is misunderstanding what's going on here. They say they're getting into this for quote unquote shock value. And I don't think that's it. I think they found one thing interesting, and now they assume all things that they've coded negative in their mind must be co-coded as interesting. So to continue with a different piece here, because I'm skipping to a new piece that's discussing this 09A group that they're affiliated with, a U.S. soldier has been accused of plotting an attack on his own unit by sending information to an obscure Nazi Satanist organization called the Order of Nine Angels. But who are they? Founded in the UK in the 1970s, the ONA is an increasing focus for law enforcement and appears as an influence in several recent UK terrorism prosecutions relating to extreme right-wing stuff. And again here, of course, just whenever they see Nazis, even though Nazis are far closer to modern socialists than anything right wing, hey, they even hate the Jews.
They're national socialists.
And a lot of people are like, they weren't socialists in the way that they're socialists we talk about today. And I'm like, no, they literally were socialist in every economic way you could mean the word socialist.
Come on, guys.
We have another video where we go into that, and I might put just another one, like just how socialists were the National Socialists. It is very socialist and very anti-Semitic, like the National Socialists today. And they divided people based on race and ethnicity and sexual orientation, just like progressives today. They're like, oh, but we do it with different ethnicities. And it's like, it doesn't matter, man. It is the dividing humans based on that stuff. So anyway, I consider these groups to be left-wing, whatever your politics are, you want to call it. But anyway, continue. So the group lionizes the Nazi era and dates its calendar from the birth of Adolf Hitler. But its supernatural belief system goes beyond anything normally associated with right-wing extremism. So note here again, I'm saying they're just trying to evil max. They start their calendar with Adolf Hitler's birth date, right? In the short term, the goal is to undermine what they characterize as decent Judeo-Christian society. So note here, I love it that they say that they're an extreme right-wing group and they are an explicitly anti-Christian group, with an emphasis on placed real-world attacks, the aim being a new imperial civilization based on a cruel mixture of social Darwinism, Satanism, and fascism. Adherents are encouraged to secretly infiltrate government organizations such as the military or Christian churches in order to destabilize them from within. Those who progress through the ONA's hierarchical ranks are required to undertake various tasks, including forming their own small groups to prove their leadership abilities, with the result that a decentralized network of associated bodies exists throughout various countries. There is a total rejection of ethics, and some key texts even discuss ritual sacrifice, both symbolic and actual. Such groups reject attempts at gaining popular support on the extreme right because they're anti-Christian. They're not right-wing at all. Anyway, whether through demonstrations or campaigns, and are instead committed to an ideology of so-called accelerationism, which predicts societal collapse and racial warfare, seeking to speed the process up through acts of violence. Well, really what they're often trying to do is increase speeds of stuff like immigration and stuff like that, because they think it'll lead to social warfare, which they can take advantage of. So they support pretty much only left-wing causes, but okay, the ideology is promoted in several online spaces, and that is where it blended with ideologies by ONA, giving the latter an increased influence and the further edges of the online community. The Durham teen neo-Nazi became, quote unquote, the living dead, somebody said about him. This last year, a 16-year-old British boy became the youngest person to be convinced of planning a terror attack in the UK, and he was influenced by this.
Goodness gracious.
So we can talk about the 15-year-old who started all this.
Yeah.
And read his Wikipedia.
Okay.
He was bullied during his high school years. A classmate called him an easy target. In his early teens, he suffered multiple psychological breakdowns and was isolated. He told probation officers that he stopped caring about anything, and after dropping out of school at 15, withdrew to his room. He found the online network and named it after his zip code of his hometown. So that's where it is, Stephenville, Texas.
Okay.
Caterhan had noticeably been disruptive as a student. At the age of 10, he was fascinated by graphic online content depicting murder and torture. He assisted principal alerted authorities about him, leading to an investigation into terrorist threats. Despite disciplinary measures, he continued to use school computers to draw images of school bangings, pow pows, like our kid got in trouble for. They say, oh, he drew a picture of a dead person. But you see, we don't stigmatize that. When our kid does that, we don't stigmatize it, which means it never becomes alluring to him. It is boring parent stuff.
Well, yeah, we're not like, that's an evil thing. That means that you must be an evil person.
Yeah, I actually talked with the school about this. They're like, well, I mean, look at all these raising rates of violence in schools and stuff like this. Why do you want to normalize this for your kid? And I go, those rates have occurred in correlation with the rate that you have not normalized this behavior in young boys. He can't talk about guns. He got in trouble for talking about a nuke in school. He can't draw people who are dead. He can't draw people with a gun. He can't draw people with a knife. I was like, when can he draw like Roman soldiers in a battle or something like that? Like, how old does he have to be? And they're like, well, I don't think even in high school you'd be allowed to do that today. And I'm like, well, do you know how often men think about Rome? You know how many times a day? You know, you are suppressing completely normal thoughts in his head, which leads to radicalization. And when we talk about like just how far this goes, Jason Castro, who is a judge who was going over him, said of him in court, there is something horribly wrong with you. Horribly. Where it's like they're looking at stuff that they haven't bench lined. They don't know the percent of young boys who find this type of thing interesting. And they just assume because it's not normalized in their communities. And keep in mind how much you chill out as an adult. Okay? And as a young kid, there were many times where I was like, well, who am I? Like, am I evil because of X? Like, am I supposed to lean into that? Because, and I think it's a really, really toxic thing to teach young people.
Agree, totally.
And you can see here the nihilism that is pervasive in many young kids makes this easier. But nihilism in youth has always been a thing. Like, people were like, come on, the young kids in the 90s weren't nihilistic. I was like, okay, what? You literally went from like the goths, who were incredibly nihilistic, to the emos, who were like a different brand of nihilism, to the vampire kids, who were yet a different brand of nihilism.
Okay, different how? They're, you know, one is good and emos are horrible. They're, you know, they're posers.
Emos suck my golf balls.
All right, think of it this way. A goth believes that deep down the world is totally f***ed up. But an emo thinks that deep down they are totally f***ed up.
That's not much of a difference.
That's a huge f***ing difference. Okay, look. Emos are more prone to suicide. This f***ing bitch, man. But goths are more prone to be depressed that so many people commit suicide. Goths' darkness is nihilistic, whereas emos is cynical. Wait, I thought we were cynical. Whatever, it doesn't matter. No, say you're nihilistic. Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, this is just so normal. You're going through it with adolescence. It's going to happen. And then on top of that, I mean, you also point out, like, you know, a lot of this is based on people sort of realizing they're aroused by stuff. Your arousal levels, especially if I think you're an adolescent male, are at their peak during these years. They are out of control. So even people who are adults were like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess I could kind of see, no man, like it must be so much stronger for what they're experiencing as well.
Yeah. If you going into other choice pieces from this is about another user. In 2021, according to court records, Alameda posted a photograph of a bound and gagged half-dressed chicken with a caption, "Life's always been SHIT. Still, I see past through rose-colored lenses."
Oh, that's so sick. Oh gosh.
And yeah, they were talking about how on the other guy's phone, they found 20 images of his online moniker carved into people that they had carved into themselves. And in this other one, they're talking about this guy showing that there were at least multiple chicken victims who he had got to engage in acts.
Gosh, that's so screwed up.
But the problem with when I read all of this is they keep collating normal teenage behavior with evil behavior, even in the way that this stuff is covered. And it's just, you know, oh, you drew people fighting, you know, and you're a young boy. That must mean you're a psychopath. It's like, no, you know, you wanted to have secret fights with other kids, or you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
how did this founder ultimately get all this time alone in his room to learn how to radicalize and then torture chickens? It was because he was first bullied and then kicked out of school and then treated like some kind of pariah. You're absolutely right. I mean, this didn't have to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, he might have been a little weird always. I doubt that he wouldn't be, right? But it didn't have to be like this.
I mean, you see how easy it is to radicalize. Like, you saw the people who were radicalized into the Charlie Kirk shooting, and they all come from Mormon communities, and then are exposed to alternate sexual identities, and immediately their brain goes crazy, right? Like, if you do not vaccinate your kids against this, and you cannot vaccinate somebody with hate actually makes it easier for them to flip.
Yeah.
Because the moment they engage with somebody and they're like, oh, this person isn't evil like my parents said, then they throw out every other warning you gave about that group of people.
Well, and you also can't vaccinate your kids if you don't vaccinate your kids, meaning that if you just shelter them and are like, well, we'll just keep you away from those people.
Yeah.
It's not.
And you're like, well, you'll be
protect them.
mature enough. The thing about the Charlie Kirk shooting with Tyler Robinson is he didn't radicalize until he was, what age was he when all this happened? Like 19 or something?
Yeah, I mean, well into his college career, it seems, when he started living on his own.
Yeah, which is when I think a lot of parents think that you're safe, right?
Right. Like, you've left the nest. I've done my job. It is all good now.
Yeah. And so this is just a conversation that I think within the circles of society that we plan on continuing to survive, that like really, really needs to be had. What's actually fascinating about it is I think it's also how, because you saw this with the Tyler Robinson shooting and everything like that, is originally he and his partner had at different times been, when they killed Charlie Kirk, they were left-wing radicals, but they had been interested in right-wing ideas beforehand. Like there's forum posts about them complaining about white discrimination. We know that the trans roommate of the shooter was really into Jordan Peterson. He even apparently was into that till the end, you know, and I wouldn't say Jordan Peterson is radicalized, but you know what I mean? Like they're involved in sort of these edgy forums. And I do think that some, you know, young people get involved in conservative circles because they were raised by urban monoculture parents. In the same way that we need to worry about our kids joining a satanic sex cult, they have to worry about their kids joining, you know, our sorts of circles. But the problem is when they join and then they become gropers. And this is what I think you need to like recognize when you're talking about any of this, is that
Did he mean to say gripers?
Griper, whatever they're called.
Sorry, someone in the comments had noticed that the last time you did this. I mean, it's obviously tradition for you to mispronounce things, and I love it.
But being is that the people who go in right-wing message boards and are like, yeah, we actually should like hate the Jews, or, you know, we actually should, you know, hate gay populations, or we actually should, you know, by the way, Charlie Kirk was not saying that stuff. He was saying the Bible says that you shouldn't do this stuff. He wasn't saying that you should hate these people, right? And yet these people come into our spaces and you need to see them as being no different than these people on the left. They aren't really part of the wider ideological movement. Like, oh yeah, we really should, you know, create, you know, like an all white nation or something like that, right? Like these individuals are just our community's sort of ticks, like their community has ticks, and they can grow and radicalize people into becoming shooters. Like just, what was it recently? There was a shooting at ICE or something against not the ICE officers this time, but against the migrants.
Right.
And so it is our job to prevent that by pointing out how pathetic these individuals are. And there isn't really a coherent philosophy behind what they believe. It's just that their parents told them these things were naughty, and society told them these things were naughty, and now they think they're being cool by doing it.
It's philosophically vacant edgelords desperate for attention. It is the most thirsty and sad thing you can ever do.
Yeah. And this is something that we've promoted on other recent podcasts, is the topic of post-racism, which I think we as a society need to move towards, which is the old definitions of racism and non-racism. They don't really matter anymore. Everybody could say, oh, you're racist, or you're racist by the 90s definition. It's like, whatever. Like clearly the wokes have some new definition of what racist is. And clearly the right is like, I don't even see why we're like focused on this word when, you know, whatever, you know, the definition seems so fluid. And I think that post-racist is a good concept, which is just to say you recognize that groups are different, but like focusing on every edgy way in which they're different is not a productive conversation for anyone. And you're not really sharing information that anyone who's interested in learning it isn't already aware of.
Yeah.
You just, serve to, well, basically masturbate online. Like that's what you're doing. You're like, look at how edgy I am. Look at how edgy I am. Look, I know information I'm not supposed to know. Which is one of the things that we always try to avoid doing on this podcast.
Yeah.
When we try to do something edgy, it's because we're asking a question that other people haven't asked. And you need to say what we're saying on this podcast is quite edgy for the conservative audience that we have, which is you need to normalize fetish porn. If you don't, it's not necessarily fetish porn, but I'd say fetish arousal patterns, like unusual arousal patterns. Just be like, weird things are going to turn you on. That's totally normal. That's not because you were abused as a kid. We've actually pointed out in a lot of our research, there's not strong correlation between a lot of this and abuse. Like it's not that abuse doesn't affect sexuality at all. It can like make you more like hypersexual and stuff like that, but it doesn't focus whether or not weird things are going to turn you on. It appears to just be random genetics. And that's really all there is to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not about your choice. You don't get that choice. What you do get to choose is how you act on it and how you deal with it. And yeah, there are productive ways to handle this. And I think, the most productive way depends on the time and context. And so I think that many religions, like historical religions, methods for dealing with these things may have made sense in those historical contexts, but those coping mechanisms don't work in the modern age when there are internet forums and Discord servers and Telegram groups, etc., where things go off the rails. It may work in like a small village with no telecommunications. We don't live in that age anymore, but that is, God, it's just terrifying. I didn't know this was a thing. I just can't believe that people are, up in arms about Dubai's porta potty parties when this is...
They don't care. No, kids going crazy. Yeah. No,
meanwhile, their kids are in a closet biting off their hamsters' heads and carving usernames into their skin, and no one's talking about it. I mean, I guess you said that Wired had done a piece, but Catherine D, when she mentioned it, had said that actually coverage on this is just pretty dismal. Like very few outlets are actually covering this and actually going into this, and it's a serious issue.
Well, I'm sure when they do,
they're just
right-wing extremism.
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, no. She cited that there was one really conservative outlet that has actually done some of the best reporting, and that she was really loath to admit it, that she never would admit it if the reporting weren't really good. So yeah, there's that. I appreciate that.
I mean, it's an anti-Christian group, so
yeah, maybe that's actually why mainstream media isn't covering it as much, is because they're like, Satanists, whatever, like
trying to take over churches, I guess.
Yeah, they do them. Yeah, sure. Whatever. But wow. Yikes. Thanks.
Love you to death, Simone. Have a spectacular day, and don't join a Satanist cult, okay?
Yeah, you neither. And let's maybe talk to our kids about this.
Well, yeah. Just and again, if you're like, well, what do I do? The Pragmatist Guide to Sexuality, the audiobook, the book, we make them super cheap, easily accessible. And it is a good, like, honest sexuality book. And sexuality is the #1 way that kids are radicalized.
Yeah. There you go.
Anyway, love you to death.
Love you too. By the way, thank you so much for, since 2 a.m. handling temperamental.
Well, you're pregnant, things.
Yeah, but I feel guilty and grateful, and they clearly feel super comforted by you, and it was so nice of you to go down and make sure they were okay and clean up.
Well, I'm glad I fooled them into thinking I'm a nice guy. The kids seem to like me.
They adore you.
This is but poor judgment of character on their part. I'll tell you what. Just because I'm their dad, I'm okay.
You are a safe place for them, and they love it, and they love getting.
I don't know. I've read the news. Apparently, I beat them.
They beat you more. Let's be honest. They beat you more. Yes, the best moment ever was when we had that journalist over, and we were showing them like how completely unafraid they were of us by like going to like slap their face, but then like stopping our hands right there, and they like don't react at all, and they just think it's really funny. And then they went to do the same thing to you later and you like flinched big time because both of us are covered in bruises from them.
Yeah, they're attack children. This is what there was one video at the end of one of the videos recently where the kids were coming after me and they all got together like a pack and they were being very aggressive. And I felt like I had like a pack of like wild animals chasing me around.
It's like that scene in Jurassic Park with the, you know, that little, like the guy's like, oh, they're just little tiny, you know, like velociraptors, like not a problem. But then they start flocking and he's screwed.
Yeah. No,
and as soon as we get to kid number 5, I mean, it's going to get to a point where you are genuinely scared for yourself.
Oh, absolutely. You are
actually, we've already reached that
5
point
in a few days. So we got to have enough backlog, right? That you guys don't miss a day.
Not a day. Yeah. And who knows how much I'm going to hemorrhage out in this one. So we gotta.
Did you hemorrhage last time?
I lost. I mean, you always lose a lot of blood when you do these, but like with some C-sections, you can lose a lot of blood. I shouldn't, but like, you know, who knows? I try to get out of the hospital.
You already lost enough by cutting off your finger.
I know, man. That cut the chickens out of my finger. Let's go. You ready?
Oh, how did the episode today do?
It went well. I think people really enjoyed it. We today ran the episode on survey stats showing the differences between Gen Z male and female Trump and Harris voters, and people found it telling. They found it interesting. People had interesting things to say about their thoughts about whether and when there will be a debt jubilee, how Gen Z is going to fare through the collapse and the disruption. So it's a very thought-provoking topic that I think is also very much top of mind for so many people as we're clicking our way to the top of a roller coaster right now, waiting for our stomachs to bottom out.
All right.
Yeah.
Puddle! Keep puddling right there!